Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Dudley with the New Center. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Communicating Sustainability, How to Share Your Message About Sustainable Initiatives. We're glad you could join us. A video recording and PDF of the presentation you're about to see will be uploaded to the new website, newconcrete.org, following today's webinar. Attendees are in listen-only mode. Because we are recording the webinar today, we will be taking questions via email at info@newconcrete.org. The ideas expressed in the following presentation are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views of the New Center, ACI, or its committees. As with all concrete mixtures, trial batches should be performed to verify concrete properties. Results may vary due to a variety of circumstances, including temperature and mixed components, among other things. You should consult your materials, cement, and concrete professionals for assistance regarding concrete production or placement. Nothing contained herein shall be considered or construed as a warranty or guarantee, either expressed or implied, including any warranty of fitness for a particular purpose. An abstract of today's webinar is shown on the screen and is also listed on the new website with the webinar series information. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker. Kimberly Kayler, CPSM, is president of AOE, Advancing Organizational Excellence, the for-profit subsidiary entity of the American Concrete Institute. Representing more than 40 associations, architects, engineers, contractors, cement suppliers, and more in the industry. AOE is the industry's leading association management and organizational consulting firm. The team provides marketing consulting, specifically in the area of sustainability communications. A frequent public speaker and author of more than 3,000 articles, Kimberly was a member of the ACI Board of Direction for several years. Further, she chaired the ACI Marketing Committee, as well as served on the Financial Advisory, Construction Liaison, and Membership Committees, as well as participated on the Task Group 2030 and led the Global Marketing Plan Task Group. She received her BA in journalism from the University of Arizona, and she earned her MBA with an emphasis in leadership from Capella University. She is currently a lecturer with the University of Wisconsin MBA program.
Thank you, Kelly. Welcome, everybody. I appreciate you being on the call today. I promise I am not going to share anything about mixed design, so I appreciate the disclaimer, but that will not apply to us at all. I am going to talk about sustainability communications, what it is and the importance of it, and really having a plan. I can sum up my whole presentation just with that. I will share that AOE is a proud member of NEW, so we're real excited to partner with NEW today, as well as see what is happening and what is moving forward from this ACI Center of Excellence. So we're going to talk about communicating and lessons learned, and I'll share some best practices as well. Start out here just with a definition of sustainability, and you'll see that I'm going to weave in resiliency in here. We're finding in our communications efforts that the two of them usually go hand in hand, and you can't have one discussion without the other. A commonly used definition you can see here from Andrea Schocker, who is on staff with NEW, is meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So I'm obviously not going to tell you how to be sustainable today, how to meet carbon neutrality requirements, but to share the communication best practices that is an evolving field. And obviously low carbon concrete is just one slice of sustainability. Sustainability and resiliency, what do we do? This is a nice graphic just showing what a mess it is right now in terms of trying to communicate what our efforts are, what our programs are. There's an overwhelming amount of information. It's very complex, and there's a lot of varying levels of understanding, whether you're speaking to a DOT, an owner, what do we mean by carbon neutral? What do we mean by sustainability? And then just our own efforts in terms of educating our employees. So sustainability communications is the act of consciously integrating sustainability in a communication strategy. It's how we communicate to our stakeholders. And the goal is to create a common understanding of sustainability challenges and then to build trust. And we'll talk a lot about trust and the role that trust plays in sustainability communications efforts. So why bother? Why is this something that we even need to talk about? Why do we need to have a webinar about this? Well, one thing we do know is that sustainability is a key value that is treasured by the millennial generation. They look at organizations in terms of their sustainable footprint, as well as their footprint and report card with regard to diversity, equity, inclusion. So we'll see that pop up in our discussions a little bit too. It also leads to greater engagement. So not only is the millennial generation looking to work with organizations, purchase from organizations where sustainability is a key factor, it helps with retention and engagement of the organization. Also, consumers are feeling empowered to change. We started to see this from a public relations standpoint before the pandemic. Consumers felt that they had a larger voice. And then during the pandemic, that just became much more amplified. So 60% of those in a recent survey by Nielsen show that they choose brands based on societal issues. And they have 67% said that they feel they have the power to force change. So what does that mean? 10, 15, 20 years ago, your organization, whether you're an association or whether you're a privately or publicly held, publicly traded company, you didn't necessarily have to answer to the general public with regards to choices you made with regard to societal issues. And now our consumers, the marketplace feels that they have a right to actually dictate and choose based on those selections and provide great influence on organizations. So it does impact you. Also, there's a lot of awareness and push for reporting has ramped up. We've heard from many clients, whether it's an engineering firm, an architect, a contractor, by healthcare organizations, for example, of, hey, don't even bother proposing on this project unless you can share your sustainability plan as well as your diversity, equity, and inclusion program. So please note that I'm not commenting on, the merit of any of those things, but we are seeing the edict coming forward in public as well as private owners alike. We do know that EPD declarations are becoming recommended. It varies widely across the country, which makes it even more difficult, where one DOT may favor looking at EPDs, another DOT in a different state may not. Same with different public entities. Environmental, social, and governance. That's something that you'll hear me talk about today too. ESG, huge rise in ESG reports. Most of the cement companies that are on this call are familiar with that term and familiar with those type of reports. Publicly traded companies for a long time have had, as part of their CSR, corporate social responsibility programs, to have ESG reports, but we're starting to see it fit over into the public sector, privately held companies as well. And then an increasing request to track supplier diversity as well, all weaved into things. So why should a company communicate about sustainability? Well, first is to inform and involve. It's key in terms of any of your sustainability efforts to make sure that your key stakeholders are aware of the efforts you're doing. It does give you a competitive advantage. Harvard Business Review has done several studies related to that the organizations, if you look among peer groups, those that are using sustainability and communicating it to their stakeholders do have a distinct advantage. And it's not just from the millennial generation. Across the generations, many are responding to that. Your reputation, building your reputation and growing loyalty, and then it does pay. There are some short-term wins in terms of financial investments, et cetera. We are seeing financial firms, equity firms looking for sustainability as well as equity in terms of how they're making decisions with regard to where they spend their funding. With all that said, it's difficult. What makes it so hard? There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's mistrust, and there's lack of immediate benefits. Sustainability is this big nebulous thing. Carbon neutrality is this big nebulous thing. How we apply it, how we communicate it, it can be very, very difficult. So the mistrust part of it, a lot of it is justified. There is greenwashing out there. I certainly hear of companies coming into the concrete space and we're all quick to, since there isn't a lot of validation yet, and that's something that New will be helping with, that there's quick call to judgment in terms of whether or not something is working or not working. There's a lot of widespread misinformation as well. And then it requires change. So we're not only asking our employees, our members, our stakeholders to change, we're changing processes and systems in many cases too, and that doesn't happen overnight. Also, sustainability is not an opinion. So your communications needs to be based on truth and scientific evidence. That is what's key in order to build that trust. And that may be different than some of your other marketing communications efforts. Not that you're ever lying in those efforts, but you may be use a little bit more marketing speak in terms of, sharing information about your product, sharing information about your organization, those brand stories. These brand stories must have scientific data in order for it to be trustworthy. And then to have a positive impact is really, really hard. It really is going to take some time. And again, it requires all sorts of change. So what else is rolled up into this? Again, making it complicated. DE and I have already mentioned that several times. Separate, yes, but we're seeing it rolled in. We're seeing quite a bit in terms of sustainability programs, the equity piece. For example, how you design highways and roads oftentimes is an equitable discussion. Culture, what's the role of your corporate culture related to sustainability? We see employee health and wellness, governance, code of ethics, risk management, safety. All of these different factors are rolled into it. And then I just wanted to share some of the other factors that you may see in an ESG report. There's a sample one here on your screen, but it could include everything from greenhouse gas emissions and water consumption to your crisis response, ethics and compliance. Some ESG reporting, because again, it's not one size fits all, will actually require you to look at all of your leadership and what they're involved in. I heard a story recently for a very big box retailer. I don't want to mention who they are, but for the contractor, the contractors that were part of the bid process, they needed to detail all of the owners of the company and all of their charitable contributions and what they're involved in. So again, that's that whole idea that consumers feel that they have they have the power to actually influence and say where time, money, energy will be spent these days. So with all of this, what is the formula for success? And like anything, we are big believers. It's taking a step back and actually creating a plan, having strategic goals, key messages, target audiences, and outlining it. But unfortunately, so many are being pressured to respond and to share their sustainability plans, goals, objectives. So they're rushing the communication effort. I will share one of the most important bullets in this whole presentation is that work in progress is okay. And from a crisis communication standpoint, and sustainability should be looked at from a crisis standpoint, because if you don't have a proactive program, you may actually be put on the defense where you actually have to defend something from a crisis standpoint. But just like crisis plans, it's really key to communicate early and communicate often, even if you don't have all the answers. It's going to be the same with sustainability. None of us have all the answers yet. All of us are trying to figure it out. Some of us are farther along than others. Some of us have plans, but it doesn't mean we have it all figured out and have everything to declare. So it's really key that we are declaring and sharing work in progress. And that can be difficult, especially for technical societies, because we like to have things all buttoned up. We like to have things validated before we're sharing information, and we simply can't. So getting started with your sustainability communications, first thing is actually having a declaration of intent. So once you have your sustainability plan outlined, even if it's got holes in it, is actually sharing what that is, having that declaration. Careful to avoid any sort of greenwashing here, substantiate any claims. So for example, if your production facility be carbon neutral by 2030, provide an update each year. So that's another thing to do. And then it's a lesson we've learned from crisis communications is sharing your declaration of intent and then telling your target audiences, this is how we're going to communicate with you, and this is how we're going to report to you. This is how we're going to share our progress. Wanted to share an example from yesterday, actually. This is American Highways newsletter, and this is their declaration of intent. They have announced their role in achieving the goal of carbon neutrality in 2050 for the concrete paving industry and what their role is as a supplier of infrastructure products, mostly Dow bar baskets, et cetera. So great example here of the declaration of intent. They don't have it all figured out yet, but they have a really solid plan, and they will continue to communicate with their audience. Speaking of audience, it's really key to understand also who is the owner of this message. So one of the things that we learned during the pandemic is traditional corporate communications, the roles have expanded, the people needed actually have evolved. So it still very much can be your comms team, your communications and marketing team, but you likely also need HR, safety, compliance, your industry associations, maybe you're partnering with them, internal committees, et cetera, maybe even legal. So really look at it from a broad-based standpoint in terms of who's owner. And then your audience of employees is really, really key. We find often that best laid plans that are shared with audiences often forget employees or maybe members. So be really, really firm in terms of understanding your communication efforts related to sustainability, and are you communicating it with your employees as well? And maybe they need to be communicated with first so they understand it. It happens all the time where employees read something and they're like, gee, I didn't know we were doing that. So how do you do that? Internal newsletter, your chat groups. I know some companies use Yammer, creating engagement with a committee. The more you can create engagement, the better. But, we saw that earlier stat just in terms of the importance of sustainability in terms of engagement and retention with employees as well. And then ensure the language emphasizes progress, not just final results. Also important, your consumers, your marketplace, clients, customers, other partners that you have. How do you share that information? Annual reports, newsletters, social media, and again, maybe using some third parties to validate your claims. And then planning and strategizing and communicating that next step of really putting the plan together. Number one, making sure you have something to communicate. They even addressed elements for reporting. That's one of the challenges that we've had when we've worked with organizations that need help with their ESG reporting, is they don't have the systems in place to actually measure and gather the data that's needed. Understanding your audiences, determining your key messages. The bullet here about no need to comment on every issue is also really important. So remember, when you are sharing information about sustainability, it's very likely that you may get some questions back, especially the way society is today. And even though we have pressure as organizations today to address different issues, you don't have to comment on every single issue. You don't have to do that. So. And then keeping employees and partners very closely involved in the process. Again, where should you post your content? Being very consistent in your messaging. And this is where it's key. Again, if you have a plan, you can work all of these key messages through these different outlets, which is key, instead of it kind of being haphazard. So social media, website, electronic newsletters, video is a great way to share messages, brochures, annual reports, etc. So I'm going to move now to finish the presentation and the top 10 tips we have for communicating sustainability. And all attendees today will actually receive an ebook with all of this information detailed, as well as other tips that we're going to provide to you to help get you started on your journey. So first one is having a plan, outlining your objectives. We've talked about this, also understanding what your metrics are going to be and the clear priorities in terms of the information that you are going to share. Number two is being true to your brand. This, again, is another lesson that was learned in the pandemic, is many tried new communication tools as well as messaging, and it was not the time to do it, and it backfired. With regard to sustainability, it's the same thing. Really, really key that what you communicate does fit your brand. The silly example is you don't want to communicate how sustainable you are, and then have all sorts of examples of, wasting paper in the office or printing a book of paper to actually share that message. And I recognize sustainability is so much more than paper, but, keeping that in mind, what is your brand? If your brand changes with regard to this, it needs to be done very carefully, or it's not going to be viewed as sincere by the marketplace as well as your employees. And I want to share a great example of that. Heidelberg Materials, Lehigh Hansen actually changed their name, rebranded January 1 here in North America. We had the pleasure of working with them. I do know we have some signed up today from Heidelberg. So one of the things that Heidelberg was really definitive about with their rebranding is that, yes, it's a new brand, but they wanted to be consistent in terms of their messaging related to sustainability and digital solutions. And you can see that here. I know there's a lot of words here on the slide, but the last paragraph, it reflects a much broader and innovative approach to serving you, our customers, as we lead the industry in sustainability and digital solutions. So really great example of being true to your brand with regard to sustainability, and it not seeming like it's a separate thing or a competing thing to your brand. Tip number 3 is keeping it simple. Sustainability can be very complex, and there may be a need for that complexity at a committee level, or your safety team, or those that are in production that are looking at things. Avoid the kitchen sink mentality of throwing every single thing and burying people in the data. Education's okay, but make sure that it's very accessible in terms of what you're sharing. And then careful to not throw words around that not everybody knows. Another great example, Slag Cement Association, committed to a greener future. That's it. Very simple, right there. Sustainability communications invites you to learn more. Number 4 is keeping it relatable. So this is where that human element is really key, really important, and that storytelling, that brand storytelling. So making stories succinct and personal, showcase people as much as you can, not death by PowerPoint, not just chart after chart after chart. And we're going to talk about charts in a minute, but take complex topics and then use visualization and call outs. So here's a great example from VCNA, parent company for St. Mary's Cement. This is one of their ESG reports that's actually summarized for their employees. So they have a connection to the reporting. You can see here, lots of people, use of color, summary. There's a ton of information in here, but you are able to just glance at it and get a good feel. Really great job in terms of how they stay true to their brand, as well as be very approachable in their storytelling. Number 5 relates to making it visual. So again, ESG reporting, sustainability reporting, communications, a lot of data, a lot of content, a lot of information. So the use of infographics, charts, and call outs is really key. Use of white space. And then that was tip 5. Tip 5.B or 5.2 I wanted to share is that with it, the visualization is making sure that it's not cliche. So we see a lot of the same examples. We see a lot of the globe, so go beyond the granola, the Birkenstocks, the Earth from space, the close-up of the recycling logo. Go beyond that. As much as possible, show your own people, create a connection there. You can use green, but you're also able to use other colors too. Overdone, it can seem very lazy and very cliche and very trite, and those that it seems like you're trying too hard. So you can see here, don't use these, find something better. And then samples of ineffective visuals. You can see here, just a lot of data, a lot of content, a lot of information. Eyes don't even know where to look. This is pretty typical of what you might see in a sustainability report or an ESG report. Also a reminder that pie charts are considered evil by those that actually study effectiveness in terms of reading comprehension, et cetera. They're hard to read, and our brain actually struggles to interpret the size of the slice of the pie that we're trying to talk about. So what could you do instead? Here's a little primer on pie chart best practices. If you must use one, you can see here the fewer the slices, the better. The largest slice should really start at the top of the chart. So again, this has all been studied in terms of how to look at things. And this is key to make sure that you are delivering good content. Other visuals that may be better to use, horizontal and vertical bar charts. You can see here how clean and effective they are. The eye is able to look at them quickly and discern what the content is. The power of simple text, some samples here of some infographics that we've created for clients. So even if you don't read all the words, it's okay. You can look quickly and see a couple of the highlights. And then the importance, since we're reporting so often in numbers, you can see here just the ability of showcasing numbers, how our brain interprets numbers and where we go with it. And then at graphs, real key in terms of how you're sharing that kind of information as well. You can see here just the benefit. If I go back, version 1, I feel like I'm giving you all an eye test, and then version 2, just by flipping the content, the information, and a little bit of shading, how much more readable it all is for you. And then the use of color. I already talked a little bit about green. You don't have to just use green when we're talking about sustainability. But this is from the psychologists that study the colors and what emotions that it actually brings up for us. And yes, I just said emotions. Sustainability communications really can be an emotional appeal in many cases. So look at this for a moment and just notice maybe the feelings that you have with regards to different color. Is it something, does it make you think of something? Does a certain color make you think of a corporate brand? Does it make you feel a certain emotion? Does it incentivize you to do anything? So great to experiment with different colors, and then just understanding the different things that you want to accomplish with them. And then last part related to this is just the importance of eliminating distractions. So not all data is equally important. So getting rid of non-critical data. So you can see here, unnecessary information sharing here, redundant information, clutter. So what can you do to clean all of this up to just make it a lot easier for your key audiences to discern? So moving on to number 6, knowing your audience and not applying a one-size-fits-all approach to your audiences. So what does that mean? Taking a step, many of you probably outlined, here's what our audiences are. I want you to take that next step and actually develop personas for each of them. And what a persona may look like, and this is actually personas we developed for the American Concrete Pavement Association, is we showcase, here is a typical, construction engineer. Here's a typical legislator. Here is a taxpayer. This is what's important to them. This is what their pain points are. These are the things they care about and don't care about. This is what their goals are. So helping understand how that then frames what your messaging is and sharing content then is it appropriate for them. And it may mean that you have different mediums, different messages to different audiences. So tip number 7 is telling the truth. I know that seems like a silly one to have on here. Of course, you all tell the truth, but it is human nature, and sometimes in our reporting that we round up, that we maybe embellish a little bit. But sustainability is really a journey, and we're building a lot of trust here. If you're not authentic in your messaging, it can take a long time to repair, being called out on something. So sharing the obstacles you've encountered along the way, studies show that that actually creates greater trust with your organization than if you just share, hey, slam dunk, we did this. Being very authentic and transparent is really, really key related to sustainability. Number 8 is being engaging. So creating connections, that human element, sell the positive, and avoid using the catastrophe or scare tactics at all. And that's something that in our studies with owners, agencies, owners, whether it's for a hospital project or, a big box retailer, or whether we're interviewing the DOTs, owners typically don't want you to come in and bash the competition. So bashing other materials besides concrete, et cetera. Don't use catastrophe, don't use scare tactics. spend your time actually sharing your benefits and sharing your story without taking that type of negative approach. Here's some great examples of being very engaging. Again, a little bit different than what we see typically in our industry. Who would ever thought we'd have ads related to concrete pavement talking about breathing easier, how it helps the environment. And these all have to be validated on the back end of these things before we do an ad campaign like this. We make sure we have the data and the research to validate it. But being a little bit more engaging in terms of what our content is and what we're sending out. So tip number 9 is being different, not emulating others and creating engagement. Again, that goes back to being very true to your brand. Oftentimes we get clients that call us or potential clients and say, hey, I want to do a certain thing. And we say, okay, why? Well, because our competition's doing it. So, and that may be the impetus, but let's not do a carbon copy. How can we be true to your brand and share your story? And then tip number 10, don't overuse the word sustainable. So this is a really great study. I encourage you to look it up, but Words at Work. The study showed that sustainability is often repeated 10 times on each sustainability webpage for Forbes top 50 brands. But those brands that are considered the most sustainable only used it once, or they used it twice. So basically, if you have to use the word over and over again, you're trying too hard. We need to move the conversation from just being sustainable to really talking about the different programs you have in place. What are the steps that you have in place to actually reach that goal? So that may seem like a really funny one to end this with, but hopefully you'll take time to look at it and think about it in terms of what are we truly trying to communicate here. It's not just that we're trying to reach sustainability goals. We are actually doing all of these different things. Here's the different ways that it's actually going to benefit our employees, our members, our shareholders, the greater good of society in whole. So with that, tips for success, again, having a strategy in place is really key. Show a presence now, don't wait. Don't have to have all the answers figured out. Being very visual is key, and then also being true to your brand. So with that, here's how to get a hold of us. We're happy to share and get on a call with anybody free of charge to talk about your sustainability plans or help you formulate them. And then I also encourage you to jump on News website, follow them. I know they've got an entire series of webinars that they are building out as well. So be sure to follow back often with them. I mentioned earlier, all of you will be getting a free ebook for joining today. So that should come to your inbox later today or tomorrow. And thank you for your time. I know that Kelly will be fielding any questions and we will follow up individually with all of those. So Kelly, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. All right, thank you, everyone. Please visit the new website at newconcrete.org for more information on this topic. While you're there, please check out our resources on lower carbon concrete production and placement. The website provides access to our sustainable concrete guides, frequently asked questions, webinar recordings, and more. Again, we are happy to answer any questions you may have, so please forward them to info@newconcrete.org. Thank you again for attending today's webinar, and if you haven't done so already, please check out the other great webinars scheduled. Thank you very much and have a great day.